Hello, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are on a wonderful show here today. We have Divorce Coalition with Beverly Price. I am your host, Cece Shatz. I'm the doyenne of relationship building. You can find all of our information right there on goingsolonetwork.com. So Beverly, welcome to the show.
Hi, Cece. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, it is great having you. I tell you, you have a wonderful show, and you have your website is Her Empowered Divorce, and you're one of our elite guests. You're the TV host, and we're just so very proud to be able to have you as part of our team. Those of you that don't know Beverly, she's a certified divorce empowerment coach. She's a pre-mediation coach and the founder of Her Empowered Divorce LLC. She also combines divorce and empowerment coaching to provide education, support, and insight to guide women along the entire divorce process and to conquer the emotional, technical, and financial situations that occur within divorce. So you do a lot, lady. We are very, very proud to have you with us. And let's talk about this new coalition that you have now established. So number one, why did you establish the Divorce Coalition?
I am a domestic violence and abuse survivor of physical violence, emotional, mental, coercive control, and financial abuse. I also went from one relationship to the other and found myself being in abusive situations each time. So I had to learn what it was about me that kept attracting me to these situations in order to break the chain. Because of my own personal experience, as you can guess, I have a real passion for domestic violence, both awareness and recovery. And so as a podcast host, I was kind of thinking, well, there are all these divorce podcast hosts, bloggers, and other divorce professionals out there. And what if we came together as a group with our combined massive reach through social media, radio, blogs, and leverage that to increase the awareness. So we have a reach of probably close to 100,000 people plus the 5 million from your radio show that will allow us to carry this message in a way that it hasn't been carried before. My hope with that is that we can change the face of the awareness of domestic violence. And in particular, we're going to be focusing first on Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October and kind of bombarding the airways and social media with things to make people aware not only of the month, but of what is domestic violence, what victims go through, what can be done. So many topics that we want that can educate not only individuals, but also professionals about what's really going on. It's commonly thought that 1 out of every 3 women has encountered some form of abuse in her lifetime. And this is really tragic. And the other statistic that was relevant to the coalition, which is all centered around divorce podcasts and blogs and so forth, is that 24% of all divorces cite domestic violence as a cause. And that is just terrible. So again, we want to take this combined reach and really make a difference.
I love that. I love the idea, of being able to segment it out, because a lot of people don't realize, when we say domestic violence, all they think about is hitting, or physical.
Right.
They don't realize that domestic abuse goes in many channels, like you said,
right.
Financial and emotional and all of that. And so being able to take this and segment it out into each, allowing different podcasts and shows, TV shows like we have, being able to have that available to those that need to listen to them, to also help in their process of healing, but also let them be aware that there are many. I'm shocked. I was shocked myself when I started participating in this, how many coaches have stepped forward that have been
Yes.
through abuse themselves, various different degrees of abuse, and how they're
Right.
stepping forward and giving of their time to be able to make these shows. So kudos to you for doing this. So what can we do as an individual to be able to create more awareness to people, to try to help this a little bit further along?
Well, I think there's several things. First of all, just like we're doing in the coalition, you can leverage your own social media by going to the Divorce Coalition page on both Instagram and Facebook. The name is Divorce Coalition page, and you can like our posts, you can comment on our posts, you can share our posts, and you can post on your own pages. That's probably the first that's going to really leverage what we do. The second is we need to move our culture from being silent condoners of domestic violence, i.e., not by our silence we condone it, to a community that condemns it. And so many times, if you tell someone, that you're being abused, or you might not even realize you're being abused because you're going through emotional and mental and coercive control, then that person that you're telling so many times doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to do anything about it, doesn't want to be involved. Another situation is where men hear about other men talking about this abuse, like the good old boys club and the locker room talk. Those men that are not abusers need to draw a line and communicate that this abuse is not acceptable, so they are not condoning it by their silence. The third thing is you can volunteer at domestic violence organizations. And the fourth is you can donate to different domestic violence organizations. And we have a website, divorcecoalition.com, and there is actually a donate tab where you can donate to places like the Domestic Violence Hotline, the Domestic Violence Research Center, and many more. So those are just a few of the things that people can do. And probably one of the most important is that if someone comes to you, and it could be a man or it could be a woman that has experienced domestic abuse, that you listen, that you try and empathize, or you try and understand, that you don't tell them it's not a big deal, that you try and help them and support them the best they can. And if they ask for help, give it to them.
Yeah, that is so important. I know that so often, and even in my own life, I had experienced that, and I didn't, I don't think I behaved the way I did, reacted the way I should have reacted, because I knew both parties, and the part that I knew of the individual, I would have never dreamt,
Exactly.
there. Then later on, I started to realize, oh, I made a huge mistake. That yes, she was being abused, and I, I feel, still to this day, I feel bad about that. So we can't make quick judgments. If someone is saying that to us, or there's indication of that, it most certainly is probably is happening. So we need to support the individual.
And there are abusers that are narcissists. Mm-hmm. And some people even think that all abusers are narcissists. And by narcissist, I mean, just like what you said, someone that can come on charming and is a wonderful person and has this persona on the outside world that they're just a great person. But on the inside world, it's devastating. And it's all about power and control. It's not about so much the act of violence itself. It's about an abuser wanting to have power and control. They want to isolate the victim from any support. They want to belittle the victim so that their self-esteem drops to almost non-existent levels. And they want to make sure that victim is totally dependent on them and them alone so that they can manipulate the situation.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they do that through finances or they do that through fear.
Yeah, that's so important. That's important to be able to make, think the awareness of that, because a lot of individuals don't realize that, And then let's talk a little bit about the individuals themselves if they're going through this, because a lot of times they think, oh, well, this is maybe how my parents were, right? Or this is how someone in my life was. So, they're not really seeing a difference. So they're going through this. And then how can we make them more aware that this is, abuse is not something that we should tolerate in our lives. It's not something that we should have.
Well, I think part of it is more people that are being abused speak out, for people to really realize this 1 out of 3 statistic is real. I think some people hear that number and totally discount it. I think other people believe that there's tons of false reporting of abuse, when in fact, false reporting is a very minimal activity, and it's an epidemic in terms of overall abuse. So one, learning from someone that it's real brings it home. And that's one thing we can do. The other thing we can do is we can listen to podcasts, we can read, we can take an active interest in it. If we had a relative that was the victim, we can be eager to learn what they went through and support them. Sometimes what happens is, if we don't know someone, we think that domestic violence victims are just weak, perhaps low income, unintelligent, when in fact, domestic violence victims can be some of the most courageous people in order to step out of that situation. And there's no socioeconomic classifications that incur abuse more than the other. I was a successful corporate executive with a high income and a nice house, and I experienced it. But what I felt was shame and disgust. And how could I, this well-educated, successful business person, get involved in this? And in my case, get involved over and over. The other thing about it is, I didn't even know that some of the behavior I was experiencing was abuse until I learned more. You made such a great point earlier. I like the phrase, but he didn't hit me, because there's so much more abuse than that just shows bruises. Mm-hmm. And so in my case, I didn't even understand what emotional and mental abuse was until I began to really research and study this. I knew what physical abuse was, and we all tend to downplay it. The other thing people around us need to do is not downplay the violence, not tell somebody to go back to the violence, not tell somebody to accept the violence as just the way marriage is, or just the way he or she is.
Oh yeah, you're so right. A lot of times too, I think that when we share with other people, and I know that this happened to myself, is that, it wasn't the, with my last marriage, it wasn't the physical aspect of it, but it was the mental and the financial. And when you mention it, and I didn't realize it myself, and then when I started talking to, luckily, I had a wonderful neighbor who was a very supportive counselor. She said, "Wait a minute, this is not way a relationship is supposed to be." And so the
Exactly.
more I started talking with her, then the more I started becoming aware that, wait a minute, this isn't the way it is supposed to be, and that I should not have tolerated it. And then starting to understand that in my own personal life, I have to set boundaries, right? And so that's
Absolutely.
what we all have to learn. So, what about the ones we hear this all the time, right? Oh, well, she'll go back. She'll go back to him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that is it's people don't realize how difficult it is to step away from someone you truly love, right? You've fallen in love with them. You've fallen in love with them when they were kind and good and wonderful. And you can't, even though bad things are happening, you can't seem to switch out of that. You keep thinking, and then they'll come back.
It'll be different.
Yeah, they'll come back and be sweet as apple pie and all that, and then you fall for that. Like, so let's talk about that. That is like a very difficult situation for many.
Sure. Imagine for a moment that you are walking down the street and someone comes up to you and points a gun at you. Imagine the fear you feel. This is the fear that a domestic violence victim feels every minute of every day. So they are living in that. Yes, they have that love component. Many times, though, they have fallen in love with what they hope he could be rather than who he is. And they don't know how to separate the two. But that fear and the power and control of abuse makes it very difficult to leave. In many cases, the abuser has threatened to kill them or harm the children if they leave. The abuser has cut them off from all finances, maybe give them a tiny allowance to buy groceries. The abuser can keep them at home, not allowing them to interact, cut their family off, cut their friends off. And so you end up feeling totally alone. You don't have a support system to reach out to, and you're terrified that it could be worse. You could be killed. Your children could be killed. Now, fact of life is it takes a woman 7 attempts to actually leave her abuser. Part of that is when she leaves and he begs her to come back. He turns on the charm. He turns on the sweetness. He turns on the apologies. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then he brings her flowers. Part of it is the fear of financial dependence. What if she doesn't have any money to find a place to live or to feed her family or to clothe her family? The abuser can have her locked into that kind of situation. Or you can have a woman that has plenty of means, has a high income, and she is in a relationship in which she feels such shame, she doesn't want anybody to know. So if you think about all those things combined, with fear being this tremendously devastating common thread, you can understand why it takes so many times and perhaps why she goes back. If you've sustained heavy abuse and somebody threatens to kill you, you believe them. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, you're not going to want to leave. So it's a very devastating situation, and it takes a tremendous amount of strength from the women involved to step out of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do have the website, divorcecoalition.com. So remember, divorcecoalition.com. That's the website there that you can definitely check it out. So is there anything else that we want to make sure that we mention to them? I know that we want to talk a little bit about October, moving forward into October, what we're going to be doing. But is there anything else that we want to share with those out there that that are in this situation, that are struggling and going through some of these things now? Is there anything particular that we've missed that we want to be able to share here today?
Well, I want to say there is hope. There is hope and there are solutions. There is support. There are people trained in how to deal with this. There are people that have been through it and know what you're going through. So you are not alone, and there is help for you if you can reach out. If you want to step out of this situation, there is help.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you want to go to divorcecoalition.com. A lot of information will be there for you. So let's talk to Beverly a little bit about what we're going to be doing in October, and actually as we continue to grow, because I think we're going to keep this awareness up. It's not going to just be for October, but we are going to do a slam dunk in October.
Yep.
Let's share with everyone what we're going to be doing, and so this way they can be prepared and want to take advantage and watch some of these videos and podcasts that we have coming out.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we have is a page on the website of all of the major podcast episodes that deal with domestic violence, deal with narcissism, deal with legal issues, you name it, it's there. And so you don't have to necessarily go to each individual podcast to research abuse. It's right there for you. Mm-hmm. You can obviously then go to that podcast and listen to their other episodes, but we've tried to bring kind of a collection of domestic abuse podcasts and blogs together. The second is you can sign up for our newsletter and communication to stay informed and learn more. And that's on divorcecoalition.com as well. You'll be able to see a social media blitz, not only from the Divorce Coalition pages, but you will see it from all the members participating in the Divorce Coalition. You will see email blasts coming out to share. You'll hear radio shares like you. In my podcast, Her Empowered Divorce, I am devoting October and doubling up my episodes to do 2 a week on all the domestic violence topics and knowledge that I wish I had had when I went through my situation. So you will see a huge blitz. There's press releases, you name it, it's going out there. There'll be some live broadcasts and so forth. So that's really our focus in October, is to raise that awareness.
Yeah, that's terrific. Now, I know for us here at the goingsolonetwork.com, we're going to be playing those shows. We've got several shows that we're going to be playing on Saturdays. So it's going to be a block of shows that we've have pre-recorded that we've already brought forward, or there are shows that are, I know even in our platform, we've had several shows that we're going to be bringing forward. So in October, we're going to be doing that every Saturday. So if you miss them, don't worry, they're there. We're also going to create a page on our platform that'll have some of the shows that we're playing. So if you miss them when they're aired live, they'll be there. They're going to be on all the major outlets that we have. The platforms will be on the Roku TV, it'll be on Amazon TV, Apple TV, some of the other TV stations that we have. We'll also be playing it in a podcast format. So if you see it on video, it'll be dropped down into the podcast, the audio, and it'll also be played on our podcast streaming that we have, and then also on our radio. So we're really going to blanket the month of October to make sure we put all of this information out there for you. So, and also in the show notes, I want to share this with everyone. In the show notes is all the information, not only the particular topic that we're talking about, but it'll be on the coach that's probably